Hey guys, could I get you some water?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Welcome, you've arrived at your destination.
Hi, my name's Colton. I'm with Team Leo, and this is our nonverbal communication presentation. Why is it important to understand nonverbal communication? Nonverbal communication is essential for working missions for many different reasons. To start, the way teachers communicate to students is one of the many factors that helps determine effective teaching, and how the students perceive the teacher's communication might affect their affective and cognitive learning and their feelings throughout the learning process. Verbal and nonverbal immediate behaviors on the part of the teacher enhance positive and effective instructional interaction, which has direct effects on the student's attitude towards the teacher in the course and the student's willingness to learn. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that the way the teacher presents themselves in their teaching with their nonverbal affects the way a student goes about the class and their willingness to want to learn. Which applies to the workplace in any area, but specifically we're talking about missions. So when you're teaching or sharing with whoever you're speaking to, you want them to want to be willing to listen. So that all starts with your nonverbal communication. And then another point is humans often communicate with nonverbal without even knowing it. Just as humans, we're programmed to communicate that way. An example of that is teachers in front of a classroom teaching with their hands or body gestures, and it's not just teachers, that goes for everybody, using their hands and their body gestures as they're speaking for nonverbal communication without even recognizing that they're doing that. And then another point is that when in the field of missions, it's essential to know the best way to communicate, and maybe even more essential to know how to listen to nonverbal communication. So you want to be able to communicate non-verbally, but you also want to be able to understand how the other person is feeling. So you want to be able to see and understand their communication back to you when you're speaking, so that you can best know how to communicate what you're trying to communicate.
Nonverbal communication can have a huge impact on the field of medicine. So our journal that we used showed us this, as discussed how patients often their physical, their mental, and their emotional states is displayed through their nonverbal communication and their nonverbal cues, as well as their body language. This can be used by doctors and able to enable them to better care for these patients, especially like neuropsychiatric patients whose symptoms are often much more under the surface and not as readable physical conditions. So doctors who are trained in reading nonverbal cues are much better able to care and provide for these types of patients. Because of this importance, there is currently artificial intelligence that is being developed to care for patients, as it allows the doctors to monitor them 24/7, essentially. Humans aren't naturally able to monitor somebody else for all times of the day, but artificial intelligence has been developed to monitor these patients and look out for certain nonverbal cues and body language cues to indicate things such as stroke or like breakdowns and other symptoms, to prevent those from happening and allow doctors to step in at that point. So this is really important for stroke patients, for neuropsychiatric patients, for Parkinson's patients, etc. This shows us that nonverbal communication is very essential to medical practice, as it's currently being held in the cutting edge and the front lines of of science and development there in the medical field. Because of that, it's very important for missionaries to, whether short-term or long-term, to have a good understanding and training in nonverbal communication. This allows them to better care for the patients that they have, to be able to support them, and also to be able to interact and communicate well with them, especially if they're trained in the nonverbal cues and communication patterns in the area or region that they're going to be serving in. So our article that we chose for the medical side of this, we chose because it was very objective, empirical, and rational. So it was 5 different researchers that worked together on this journal about the benefits of nonverbal communication in medicine and its use in artificial intelligence development. They were funded from multiple universities in various countries around the world. So already you're getting objective. The more people are funding this, the more people are pouring into this and involved in this, the less bias there is. The 5 researchers also drew upon the studies and research of 127 other researchers and their findings on nonverbal communication. So they're using a very wide set of data, very empirical data, but also avoiding bias in that, finding even more information and coming from even more angles. They're also able to use all this information in very rational ways and drew very rational conclusions about their findings, finding that these nonverbal cues are really important to diagnosis of symptoms and to interpreting symptoms, and hence can be very valuable in furthering the usage of those nonverbal cues, and hence the development of artificial intelligence comes from that. And that was the researchers' main findings and main points that they were trying to drive home, which I think is a very rational conclusion. How can we further use this tool that we have to provide even better care for these people?
Our last article that we looked at is the effect of teachers' verbal communication and nonverbal communication on students' English achievement. So this study was conducted, and its purpose was to establish good communication between students and teachers. So the most effective way that teachers can teach, they want to be doing that so that the students can learn most effectively and retain the most information for the time that the teachers have. So this study was done in Indonesia, and there were English classes that were used for this study, and the results were the output of their final exams. So the way they went about this is they had 2 different groups. They had groups with verbal communication and nonverbal communication, along with just a group that had only verbal communication. The output of the study was their test scores, and the results were significant, showing that the students who had both verbal communication along with the nonverbal communication as a teaching style, they ended up with the higher test scores. So next, Carter's going to explain the evidence which made the study scientific.
Hey everyone, it's Carter here, and I am continuing on in nonverbal communications and teaching. Here I am going to show you the characteristics of science. They include empirical, objective, and rationale. Empirical is when researchers observe data and record what they find. Here it shows that English scores were recorded from a group with verbal and nonverbal communication and a group that had only verbal communication. The next is objective. This is how the researchers shows that they are unbiased. In this experiment, the scientists made sure that all students were at the same level of reading and English comprehension. They also had a control and an experiment group to show differences between the two studies. The third thing is rationale. This is where scientists show that they have a previous understanding and expectation. In this study, the scientists come in with the understanding that nonverbal gives help in communicating a point. Here on the next slide, we have our sources. Now, we would like to encourage any students at Cornerstone that plan on traveling to a different country to take a nonverbal communication class to better prepare themselves for places that are different than Cornerstone. This will help them be more successful in the places that they travel to. Thank you for listening to our presentation. Have a great rest of your day.